Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to another edition of the We Talk Chelsea podcast. Three blokes with the love of Chelsea Football Club who occasionally kick a ball around a pitch. Well, what a week it's been. New goalkeeper Caicedo potentially coming in, and also the Ngolo Kante is looking like he's looking at going out the front door. Chaps, how have we all been? I have to forgive me, my internet connection is not the best. I came in like 1 minute just before I had a power cut, so I'm currently watching myself. I'm so laggy, it's unbelievable. So hopefully you guys can hear me. Hopefully everybody can hear me. How are you, Charlie? How are you, Tim?
Yeah, all good. Yeah, it's just another week in the revolving circus of Chelsea, isn't it? We just seem to be at the moment selling players for fun and not buying too many. We're linked with everyone under the sun, and then as soon as we get linked with them, every other Premier League club does, and we cross our fingers that we end up getting them. But it's one of these, isn't it? At this time of the summer. So I say summer, the transfer window. Some teams seem to get their business done early, and some seem to not. And we're certainly one of the ones that seem to end up doing it late. But I don't know. What do you think, Tim?
Yeah, well, I pretty much echo Charlie's thoughts. I mean, transfer window open soon. There's been this sort of impending sort of doom of a question: do Chelsea need to sell before June the 30th? We've got so many players that need to go out the door. I know the transfer window hasn't opened, but it seems like even the guys that were supposed to leave with a transfer fee, suddenly that's all changed now with AC Milan. I think Ruben Loftus-Cheek was meant to be moving, and now that looks like it's not going ahead anymore. So, yeah, it just, I don't know. The precedent is set of like even Kai Havertz, for example, he was supposed to be going to Real Madrid. That looks like it's off the table now. Where do we go from here?
Yeah, it's like you said, it's a very merry-go-round of Chelsea Football Club, and a lot of things, funnily enough, are actually out of our control. It's like you mentioned with AC Milan, Paolo Maldini, the technical director of AC Milan, has shockingly been sacked, despite getting AC Milan or helping AC Milan to get to the semi-finals. But there's a lot to talk about here. We're live on YouTube. Make sure you hit the subscribe button down the bottom if you can join us, and also we're live on TKS TV. So thank you if you're watching over there. Let's start with, okay, where do we begin? It's mostly transfers that we've got to talk about. I know a lot of people in the ether on the internet are a big fan of Fabrizio Romano and the transfers and the merry-go-round that it is. Should we focus on outgoings or ingoings? What do you think?
I suppose outgoings is the first one, isn't it? Because
Okay.
we all said that we were going to sell a load of players first. So let's go on the outgoings. And from what we can see, from what Lord Fabrizio says from what I've been reading his stream, apparently the Mount thing looks like it's a goer, but the price may not be agreed with Man United. Now that's interesting, isn't it? So this basically how I read into that is this is going to be it's going to be an all summer thing. This one, I don't think this is going to be done next week. I think we're 20 million pounds away from where we need to be or where they need to be. Mount clearly, will happily sign on the dotted line once that fee's agreed. But I think that it seems at the moment that it's going to be a long drawn negotiation, and that's
Yeah.
not a good thing for us. To be honest, it's not a good thing because we need to replace this player and we need the money.
I
Quite
don't.
frankly.
I don't think the long drawn out negotiation isn't necessarily an issue in terms of replacing the player, especially this early into the transfer window. I think it's more to do with FFP. It's been well documented. We need to get rid of players or generate funds from sales. The only way
Yeah.
we can do that is for academy players. Ideally, they've cost nothing to bring in, essentially, and they obviously have to generate money. The problem is, Ruben Loftus-Cheek deal looking like it's been put on the back burner. I don't think it's completely off, but with Mount especially, I think the key sticking point here is going to be the financial, the compensation that Chelsea receive for that. I think they wanted £70 million. rumours around that the offer's been made for Mount around about 50. So there's a discrepancy of 20 million. It's down to negotiation of where they can get it there. It might just be a case of, okay, we want this, but if you win X amount of cups or whatever with Mount in the squad, then it's all down to negotiation at this point. But I for one, I know we've had this distracted. I've been detracting of, if that's even a word, of Mount this season. But he's going to be a big player to miss. Let's face it. When we think about it, when we think of people coming through the academy, when you look at it now, Tomori's at AC Milan, Chalobah's potentially rumoured to go to Inter Milan. Mount going to Manchester United potentially. We're kind of losing the kind of the thing that Lampard kind of started when we had the transfer ban is he brought these players through. And now we're kind of losing that identity once again. It's kind of feel a little bit lost. I don't know what you think about that, Tim. Do you feel that we're kind of losing a little bit of that kind of identity that we have?
Yeah, well, I suppose with a change of management and change of owners as well, you're gonna have a new identity in a sense. It may not carry over the same as what the old board or old manager wanted, because at the end of the day, everyone has different ideas of how to run a business or run a football club. So, as time goes on, people will change at the end of the day. What this new identity turns out to be, it looks like a young, talented squad who, supposedly is going to challenge for titles and possibly be sold on for profits, I think, to maybe the Barcelonas, Real Madrids and Bayern Munichs. But it depends, do we actually become a competitive team in our own league before we start thinking of actually selling players? Do you know what I mean? Do we reach maybe the likes of like a Tottenham or, Arsenal in the 2010s where we do develop these players, but we're just not good enough to actually win? And that becomes our identity. I'm not exactly sure. I don't know if you agree, Charlie.
Funnily enough, you say that. I was doing a bit of homework this afternoon, and literally I drew out the entire squad from the 2021 Champions League winning side. This was 2 years ago we won the Champions League. I'm not going to name them all out because that would be like reading the register. But what I will say is, if we were to lose, say, for example, Mount, Havertz, Ziyech, Kovacic, Kante, which we almost already have, Pulisic, which we probably will, and probably Azpilicueta and maybe Kepa and Mendy, the only players left in that squad, which is about a 30-man squad, is Reece James, Chilwell, and Silva, and that's it.
Yeah.
So in terms of that, you see what I'm trying to say. I mean, that was only 2 years ago, but in terms of that turnover of player, that's huge. And Silva's going to be finished next year. Reece James and Chilwell don't necessarily feature in every game. It's not ideal.
It's not ideal, and I think that kind of level of churn out of a club, we needed to get rid of players. We did, but sometimes I think we mentioned last week the problem that we had is they're players we didn't necessarily see linked. It looks like the Havertz deal, which was so red hot at this point last week, has kind of died off a little bit. Whether we have the option to retain him and we can keep him, I mean, I would like to see Havertz in his natural position. I think I was, not particularly complimentary of Havertz during this season, the second half of the season. But then I have to think, hindsight, you have to look back and think, okay, this player isn't playing in his natural position, really. He wants to be a number 10. He wants to be, an outside number 10, something along those lines. Have that kind of free role in behind a main striker, in behind a focal point with maybe Nkunku coming in as well. So you have Nkunku and Havertz. And then if we do get that number 9, hopefully it's not Romelu Lukaku coming back. That's another thing we can discuss a little bit later on. I think a key thing that we mentioned on this one is kind of shocking in a way, because I don't think it was kind of rumoured at this point. When you do think about it, well, there was no rumblings of a contract discussion really, or coming anywhere close to signing. But it's looking like Ngolo Kante is going to leave the club after 7 years at Stamford Bridge. A phenomenal servant. I think he was the most natural. When we lost Claude Makélélé, when he left the club. I think that there was a big hole, and I don't think it was properly filled until N'Golo Kante joined the team. I've been a massive fan of N'Golo Kante. I think he's exceptional, and I think he's had his problems with injuries over the last few seasons. It's undeniable, but when Kante's in the team, Chelsea do look and play better, and you kind of think, well, what's going to happen next? How are we going to fill that, albeit small stature shaped hole of N'Golo Kante? If you're Pochettino, I mean, do you potentially give more time to people currently in the squad, or do you think, okay, we need to go out there and get the Caicedo that we're currently linked to at the moment, Tim?
Well, I mean, that's like a big question in itself. Of course, like Faizan's comment there in the chat, I don't know if you've seen it. Am I sad to see Kante leave? Yeah, I am, because, you know, although he hasn't played a lot of games this year, I feel like whenever he is fit or when he's at his rearing best, you know, there's not many players in the world that can play to his ability or his level. However, saying that, of course, I think, you know, his time has run out now. You know, he's getting on a bit, too many injuries. Can we really rely on him on 300 grand a week? I don't see a point of renewing that contract unless it was on reduced terms, as was discussed about the pay-as-you-play contract, which, again, I don't think he was going to accept anyway.
No.
From just a business perspective, I don't think it makes sense for him if he's, you know, what did he play, about 10 games this season?
7.
Only 9 games. I think it's because did he do his hamstring against Tottenham, and then it just kind of think, oh, he's out for 4 weeks, and then it's another 4 weeks, and then it's another 4 weeks, and another 4 weeks.
I think he had to have surgery on his hamstring.
Yeah.
Again, once you start having surgery on your hamstring, I'm sure it doesn't grow back to the size it was originally. So
yeah.
Again, you know, with all these type of muscle injuries, obviously it's going to be something maybe performance-wise, as you see anyway in the game nowadays. It's a lot of muscle injuries just because of the amount of football that's being played. And with someone who's such a high-octane footballer like Kante, these muscle injuries are going to be more repetitive as time goes on.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I am sad to see him leave, but for the sake of Chelsea and probably his own benefit, it's the right decision, because what is he earning, 100 million a season?
100 million a season, which is astronomical money. It's like 1.9 million a week, which is crazy levels. It's. I was having a little look at his stats when you mentioned it, and I think he's always had with ourselves 40 plus appearances. Other than the 2019-20 season when he had 28, so he's always played or made 40 appearances, and I thought that's a lot more consistent than from my own memory. I always thought he just missed more than that. I'm not too sure why I thought that. I think just consistently like the odd niggle here and there. But Charlie, is it an easier pill to swallow knowing N'Golo Kante is not going to a rival in what it looks like Mount's going to Manchester United and Kovacic potentially going to Manchester City to replace Gundogan? Is that an easier pill to swallow? Do you think, he's done his time and, he's going to go abroad and earn a bucket load of cash? Does that make it more palatable?
Yeah, I mean, I think if we look back a year ago to when Azpilicueta signed his contract, in hindsight, we probably would have let him go, right? In hindsight, we would have probably gone. He was, but we just had this emotional attachment to the guy. And it wasn't, we were thinking with our hearts and not with our heads. And it's very similar to Kante. It's a perfect time to leave. He's 32 years old now, right? That job that he does is a young man's game. He's running up and down that field, like a headless chicken. This year, he's played 9 games out of 50, okay? So that's less than 20%, right? I worked that out in my head to be about 18%, yeah?
Nice.
That's
quick maths.
Thanks, mate. We bought him for, what was it, 30 million quid, 35 million quid. It was a brilliant deal. We've had him for 7 years. He's been a brilliant servant. He's won the Champions League. He's won the Premier League, won the FA Cup. He's won everything that he could have possibly won, apart from the Carling Cup, right? And believe me, I looked it up.
I love how you still call it. I'm surprised you didn't call it the Worthington Cup then, to be honest.
I was going to call it the Milk Cup. I was going to call it the Milk Cup just to annoy you, but no. But yeah. I mean, yeah, I don't see what more he can do for us as a club, and I don't see what more that we can offer him as a player. And I think it's the right time for him to leave. I think it's an amicable ending to a brilliant tenure at the club. And thanks very much. Shake your hand. There's no, and the fact that he's going, and the fact that he's going to Saudi Arabia is a bonus, quite frankly. He could have probably gone somewhere else in the Premier League quite easily, but he's decided. Well, obviously he's gone for the money. No one's denying that they're paying him an arm and a leg. But the point is, he's obviously, for us as a football club, that's brilliant. It's a really easy pill to swallow, and we can leave with our heads held high, knowing he'll never play for Tottenham. So brilliant.
Yeah, we hope. I mean, I think one of the things that I'm quite concerned about is that midfield. Now there's a very high turnover in midfield in just the space of 6 months, really. Like you look at the Jorginho, Kante, Kovacic is going as well, Mount going as well. That midfield, Gilmore's they've all gone within the last 12 months. Yeah. It's crazy the level of turnover that we're experiencing at the moment. I think a key thing that I'm really looking forward to seeing is just seeing things settle. Getting rid of the players that we need to get rid of, like the Ziyech's and the Pulisic, that we're all kind of agree that's the case. But we need players to come and fill that gap. And the rumours currently swirling at the moment is that we are still in the running for Moises Caicedo from Brighton. We're obviously going back to Brighton again. I don't know, honestly, at this point, I don't know why Todd Bowley didn't just buy Brighton. Because did he just buy Chelsea because it's central? Or is it closer to Heathrow, do you reckon?
Who, sorry?
Todd Bowley.
Oh, you didn't mention that. Yeah, Todd Bowley. Yeah, well, probably. But apparently, I'm sure when I read upon his fact file, he used to study in London. I think he studied economics in London. And he previously tried to buy Chelsea 2018-19, around then. But Roman rejected. So, smart at the time. Well, if you look at it now, maybe.
Probably regrets it now, doesn't he?
Yeah. but yeah, I think it's something he probably saw Chelsea as a good investment portfolio, as we've discussed before. And who knew what was going to happen with COVID at the end of the day, and whatnot's happened since then. But yeah, God knows. Yeah,
I mean, have you kind of paid attention to the under-20 World Cup at the moment?
Yeah.
Cesar Casadei, I think I pronounced that right. He's a Chelsea player. He was on loan at Reading last season, but he's won the player of the tournament. He's won. Did he win it? The under-20 title with Italy. It's another player that could potentially come in. Looking like Carney Chukwuemeka is going to go out on loan. And I thought, Carney didn't get as much competition, much opportunity to play, but had a little bit of look, and he played more for us than he did Villa the season before.
Yeah.
So it shows that the opportunities were there. Like, really, I mean, I'm not sure how many of those are going to be like 5-minute cameo appearances from the bench, but I'm assuming there'll be some. But Moises Caicedo, from what I can see, he definitely fits the bill of a Kante type player that's going to win the ball, break up play, pass off to the more creative players, as it were. I mean, Charlie, what have you witnessed from Caicedo that makes you think potentially he'd be a good sign? And if there's anybody you think internally that we should promote from within, would you like to see Lewis Hall potentially get an opportunity in centre midfield?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's worth what they're touting out. I mean, that's the biggest thing, the biggest concern that I have is that apparently it's going to cost us, was it 100 million? He's not worth that.
No, it's looking at they're looking at 80 million, really.
But the leverage as well is on Colwood, isn't it? Apparently, so apparently they're saying, well, we want him, and we don't want to sell him, so then we're walking away. So again, this might be such a long thing again.
Yeah.
We don't need this. We need to do the business quick. There can't be. I mean, if you look at, I go back to, you look at Liverpool, right? They announced who they were selling straight away. They said, right, well, Milner's going. For me, they all knew they were going before the end of the season. They went, oh, right.
To be fair, that was their contracts expiring.
Okay, but we didn't say to Kante, he's off, did we? Didn't bother with that. Why? There's no reason. We're not getting anything from this Saudi deal, are we? As far as I know. No. So why don't we just say, right, well, Kante's going. Time's up. Why?
He's on a Bosman. I don't know, because it would have been nice to know
to
that,
wave him
okay, this is
goodbye.
his. Yeah, that would be nice. But potentially he might return one day to Stamford Bridge for some form of, do you only get testimonials at like 10 years or something like that?
No, you
He's
get
only with us for
testimonial when
7
he
years.
retires. But the point is that why is it that Liverpool seem to know before the window even opens? They know what they're doing. McAllister signs.
because
They
they're
get him
aware.
for £35 million or something, right?
Yeah.
Could that be
Within
just
a
due to the
day.
fact?
Within a day, it's just
Could
done.
that be due to the fact we didn't announce Pochettino until after the last game of the season? That might potentially be why it wasn't announced prior to that. Do you think maybe Pochettino would have went, I kind of want Kante, or they were waiting for him to make the decision on Kante? Do you think that might be something?
Possibly, yeah. I could see that being the case.
Potentially, but he hasn't started yet, has he?
He starts on July the 1st.
So it's irrelevant. We know Kante's going.
Technically, he's being paid from July the 1st, but I think we'd be foolish to think he's not got some form of input at the moment. I think it's just due to his contract with PSG. I think he was on gardening leave for his contract, so he couldn't join anything. So it means we don't have to pay any money to PSG. Because if we got him to start at the start of June or something like that, stupidly, we'd have to pay a fee to PSG, which obviously we don't want to do. So I think it's more like an unofficial capacity at this moment. Let's look more through to players. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up the Wikipedia for Chelsea, because we have 31 members of the squad. Sometimes it's hard to remember everybody. So just looking through the list here now, there's a lot, like you said, there's a lot of players that's looking like they're going through. I think the key area they're going to believe in is that the key area at the moment is the goalkeeper situation. It's looking likely. I haven't heard any rumours for Kepa, unless somebody wants to say they've heard something, people interested in Kepa, but it's looking likely that Edouard Mendy might be used as makeshift to Inter Milan or AC Milan for either Mike Maignan, I think I pronounced that wrong, or Andre Onana. I don't know did either of you watch the Champions League final on Saturday?
Yeah.
What did you make of Onana? I thought he was incredible. I thought he was absolutely fantastic. He's like, with the ball at his feet, he is a sweeper keeper, and I think he was out Edison in Edison, because he was great at his feet. His distribution was fantastic.
Yeah, from what I've seen of Onana, he's not a brilliant shot stopper. He does have wild moments in the sense of he likes to, he's a keeper who doesn't stay on his line very often. I think he likes to get often involved with play because he is so technically good with his feet. He's one of the keepers I'd say is better than Mendy and Kepa, but is he really going to take us to where we want to be? I'm not quite sure.
Do we have to consider who's out there realistically, who we can get? I heard rumours that Charlie be dumbfounded that Jordan Pickford. There's soft rumours that he might go to Manchester United. Very, very soft rumours. I'll add that. But Onana, he's 6'4". He's taller than Kepa. Kepa isn't exactly known for his shot stopping. Ideally, is Onana an upgrade?
Yeah, I mean, go on, you go.
From what I've seen of him anyway, and the stats I've read upon him, he's not a brilliant shot stopper. Like I say, he's more of a keeper that would like to play with his feet and come off his line maybe and give you a heart scare moment. Same way as someone like probably Victor Valdez, if you remember him in his Barcelona days. And I think he could be a good or decent keeper, much like Hugo Lloris is for Tottenham. But is he a world-class or top-class keeper? I'm not. I don't see it within him.
But who's a world-class keeper that realistically we can get to without the promise of Champions League football?
Yeah,
I don't think there's many.
Yeah,
and if you look at, you mentioned
Leeds keeper today,
Meslier, which there's no point getting, because I think he's a worse shot stopper and he's worse with his feet. So I think it doesn't make any sense to go after like that. I think Kepa, I think he's still on a particularly long contract, so it's looking likely that Kepa might stay as a number 2, from what I can see. But Onana, I think from what I saw, if I was trying to imagine myself as if I was watching like Chelsea versus City in that final, and I felt so reassured by any time a back pass was going through. to him, that he was on the ball. Like, he's even with Haaland chasing him down like a dog with a bone. Do you know what I mean? But I thought he was great. I genuinely thought he was great. And if we could see some replication of that, and I think the key thing that you mentioned as well is Hugo Lloris. Is Hugo Lloris, is known for. He is not necessarily he's available, but Hugo Lloris, worked under Pochettino. So
oh no, please.
He works. I don't want Hugo Lloris. I don't think he's going to.
I don't want it. I was joking.
But Hugo Lloris can distribute the ball. It's just that he's one of those things where he flaps a little bit when it comes to shot stopping. Like,
the thing is with this Onana guy, right? He's a bit of an unknown quantity, but the thing is, it's bait for Lukaku. That's the whole point. We need to. This is the biggest elephant in the room at the moment. Is Lukaku? He's on the highest money. We need to either get rid of him or keep him. We've got to decide that. If we're going to get rid of him, there's only one club in the world that want him, or not even want him. They might want him, right? And that's Inter Milan. Okay, but there might be some way that we can offset a transfer fee to go towards his wages. There'll be a deal that they can do. So, say for example, Onana's worth, how much do you reckon? What, 30 million quid? Yeah,
it's probably more.
40 million quid. Okay, how much is Lukaku worth on this day's market? 60 million.
3 million.
Okay, you do
based on Saturday's
performance. No, but let's be totally honest on what he's done before. Blah blah blah. Probably. Okay, let's say 50 million. Okay,
60 million.
And there's a 10 million deficit. So why don't we just do
I'll look at transfer market.
A straight swap, and 10 million of that goes towards Lukaku's wages, and then we get him off the books. Simple as that. Let them do a 2-year, 3-year deal with him, because he's 30 years old now as well, Lukaku. We need to get rid of that guy. We either need to we can't have him on loan again. It's got these players. It's going to be the same problem next summer. Because Inter Milan are just going to do the same thing next summer. They're going to go, we've got this player that you might want, and do you want to have him? And then we can put him as bait, and it'll be exactly the same thing. So this summer's crucial. We've got him he's got a few years left on his contract, or 2 years, 3 years left on his contract. It's a huge contract. Let's just get rid of him, even if it's for nothing, virtually. It doesn't really matter.
I mean, does it play a factor in terms of FFP though? Because this is a player that we've bought for 97.5 million, and if we say,
I think it does, because I think FFP includes wage bill as a whole, and I think the fact that he's on the highest wage is huge.
So it could work out.
Yeah, if we can also get rid of Koulibaly, who's on the third highest wage, and apparently I've heard whispers that Koulibaly's interested in going to Saudi Arabia with a few other people, with the rest of the has-beens, then that might work. and maybe if we can tout Lukaku over there, brilliant. But the point is, if we can get Koulibaly off the books and Lukaku off the books, it will make a huge dent in the whole wage structure of the club. It'll be a good thing.
I mean, Dale's come in with a stupid comment here saying De Gea for 2 to 3 years. If he doesn't agree on a contract, I mean, better than your 2 most clean sheets. I mean, he won the Golden Gloves. However, if we're looking for a sure ability at the back and somebody comfortable on the ball, I don't think David De Gea is that person to fill that gap. I don't know, Charlie, if you can argue otherwise. Temra, if you can argue otherwise.
No, I don't think anyone can argue otherwise. I think that's a horrible shout, unfortunately. Maybe if we weren't looking to play out from the back, I would definitely go with that De Gea shout, because he is a brilliant shot stopper at the end of the day, on his day. And as you've seen from Man United, he's saved them countless times. However, with the ball at his feet,
no.
There's the other one. The other one is Martinez from Aston Villa.
Yeah, again, would he move though?
It's conference. The only thing that might be a draw for him, potentially, if you think about it, there's Argentinian players in the team. There's Enzo there, and then Pochettino coming in as well. So he might have the opportunity to. He might want to do that, but at the same time, would you go from? I mean, it is the Conference League, but I thought the Conference League was great this year. West Ham winning it, but the Conference League, would he go from the Conference League to no European football when he's able to showcase himself, or would he think, okay, I'm going to stay in the Conference League where Unai Emery is manager, and I'm almost guaranteed to win a title with Aston Villa because Unai Emery is the manager? Could you? I mean, what's your opinion on that, Tim? Do you think Emiliano Martinez is potentially somebody a stopgap that could be put there, because he's kind of on the older side as well, so he's not going to be somebody long term? It would be like a 3-4 year deal before we find the person to replace him at the age of lower 20, or is it Slanina to come in as well?
Yeah, that's the thing. I think Slelina still needs a loan. So, in the sense, we still need a goalkeeper no matter what happens.
Yeah.
Does Martinez want to move? I don't actually think that's the case. I think if we were in the Champions League, that may be a different case, or maybe even the Europa League. But with us finishing where we have now, like me and Charlie and you have discussed, we've left ourselves open now where you do kind of either rely on your club's history or club's finances. And unfortunately, we're not really that elite in terms of history as much as people like to say, oh, Chelsea have pedigree. Every other team has pedigree above us right now. And, and then it comes down to finances. Do you really want to overpay and overspend on these players? Because, we do have quite a unbalanced wage book because of what we did last summer, giving Koulibaly, Sterling, and the likes 300k a week. So the next players that come in now, they're going to ask for a huge wage as well, I suppose. And you still have the fact of, you have players on your books right now that you can't actually get rid of. Some of them I've heard apparently would be happy to stay and see out their contracts, because we do have I think 5 or 6 players with 1 year left remaining on their contract.
Yeah, Aubameyang is one of them.
Aubameyang, Aspilicueta, Ruben Loftus-Cheek, Pulisic, Ziyech.
Pulisic has got 2, I think. Ziyech has got 1. I mean, I was looking at it today.
He signed in 2019, wasn't he? So it should be next year.
Yeah, I think it's Pulisic.
I don't think he's on extension.
I think it was a 5.5 year
he's
deal.
Got 1, maybe,
because he joined in the middle of
2, something like that.
He joined for 5.5 years, but then he went back on loan for the rest of the season to Dortmund.
Yeah.
So I think that's what it was. But I think, you're right. We're on players that we need to leverage those players to go out, like the Koulibalys. I don't think he's completely settled into the system at Chelsea. There's been
got 1.
Yeah,
Hudson-Odoi is another player. So Hudson-Odoi is another player that we need to try and ship out, really, because there's no place for him, really, unless Pochettino and the Brighton team, the recruitment staff that we took over, essentially, think, okay, well, we can work with him and he can be a bit of somebody in off the bench. But the thing that goes in his favour and the club's favour is that he's a homegrown talent and it's straight profit. And I think he's going to be one of those players that's going to be put on the chopping block in this scenario. The latest rumours, just to go through, so go for the squad here. So having a look here, so Christian Pulisic, from what I see, is linked to Juventus potentially to go in that direction. The problem we have, I think a thing that might work in our favour in terms of the goalkeeper situation with Andre Onana is Inter Milan. They are in financial trouble, so it's kind of getting that balance right of do you want Romelu Lukaku? We'll take Onana off your books. And also another player that's been linked to us in a number 9 position is Lautaro Martinez from Inter Milan as well. And I don't know too much about Martinez. I don't know if either of you would be able to elaborate any further. But the only thing I heard about him is he can kind of blow hot and cold in terms of form. When he's on form, he's potentially up there with some of the top 10 strikers in the world. But when he's off form, he's kind of a little bit vacant, a little bit lost. Tem, I think you might have seen more of Martinez. What do you make up potentially of Lautaro Martinez coming to Chelsea?
Again, I think he in a strange way, they don't play anything alike, but he reminds me of a bit of Alexis Sanchez, a bit of a battler and someone who likes to just drive with the ball and take a shot on. And I think he's more suited in a 2 than a 1. And if you look at his number, he's like a 1 in 3, 1 in 4 sort of player. So again, it's kind of hard for us because we like to play with 1 up front. I don't think he could galvanize an attack by himself, but that's the reports are saying that Pochettino thinks he can lead the attack by himself and sort of bring others into play. But I don't think he's that type of player, like a Drogba or someone who can sort of lead the line by themselves and bring others into play. He more wants someone to play off and, kind of like what we have now with Kai, whereas, he could lead the line potentially, but his best games will come when he's playing next to someone else, sort of like how he was playing with Giroud or Tammy and how you've seen Lautaro playing with Lukaku. His best games usually come when he's got Lukaku to sort of alleviate space for him to get the best out of him.
So what about if we had, Nkuku on the left, and then Lautaro Martinez just behind, and then Lukaku as the number 9 for Chelsea. It's been dumped into Milan, so no, I'm only joking. I'm only joking.
Okay, right.
it literally, I can't see it happening. I don't think Lukaku's probably going to come back to the bridge. Let's face it. Could you mentioned that he works best in a 2, but can he work within a 3? We have Ngolo coming in, and Ngolo has the ability to work and operate as a number 9 if need be. He was the Bundesliga top scorer last season. I think he missed a handful of games as well. With Ngolo coming through, and then Havertz and just behind, as well as if we have Lautaro Martinez, could he work with an Ngolo with Havertz with his height as well? Albeit, I don't think Havertz is, despite being quite tall, I don't think he's known for being particularly aerially strong.
Yeah.
I think he's definitely missing about 6. He's definitely missing about 5 kilos of muscle. I think it'd be good to see him tack a bit of that on. But it's interesting the way things go. I don't know if you've seen any. Sorry, go on.
The only problem is the conundrum we've left ourselves in. We've bought Modric. Now we're gonna have to use him. Madueke, we're gonna have to use him. We bought in Sterling on £300 a week. He's going to demand to start. So realistically, you've only got maybe 1-2 spaces available. We've already bought Ngolo in already. So again, you just really need a striker now. And what are you going to do with Kai, Mount? Do they stay on the bench now next season, or obviously Mount we know most likely will leave, but in terms of Kai now, does he become a bench player next season? So I think we've created our own problem by buying too many players already now. And we've got to weed them out in a sense before we think of bringing maybe 2 or 3 more in.
Do you think, Charlie, that what might be beneficial? Pochettino was known for playing with Spurs with a 4-2-3-1, and Chelsea, in the mid 2000s, we utilised that fantastically with Drogba as being the spine. Do you think it'd potentially be moved to sacrifice a player from the back? It just means we're not going to get the best out of those wide players. We're essentially asking Chilwell and Reece James to kind of not be as attacking minded. Could it be something that we potentially move to accommodate that extra, attacking player that we have? Because, if off the top of my head, if I was to think of, say, for example, we did sign Lautaro Martinez as a 9, and then Havertz in just behind, and Sterling, and then somebody else on the other side, depending on, Modric or something like that. Do you think a 4-2-3-1 could be beneficial? And then we sacrifice, we're losing players in midfield as well. So, we may as well we only start with 2. Is that something that is an option, considering we're so, heavily loaded at the front end?
Yeah, look, I was actually watching a Tuchel interview recently about when it was with Glenn Hoddle, when he first came into Chelsea, and he said he was on the plane on the way to that Wolves game, the first Wolves game, and he was on the plane and he was going, bloody hell, what positions am I going to play? And the only reason he picked whatever he picked, I think it was a 4 at the back, was purely because of the players that he had available to at the time. Now, you've got to understand that the manager will pick whatever he sees fit with the players that he's got. He's not going to be dictated by the fact that Reece James and Chilwell play for Chelsea, because that's not the way to do a system. It's not. If you're going to do a long-term thing, you play the way you want to play. Maybe to begin with, he might come out and go, I'll play X, Y, Z. But if Klopp knew, let's say Klopp I'll give Klopp as an example and Guardiola as an example. These are the 2 most successful managers so far in the English league in the last, let's say, 10 years. They knew from day one what system they wanted to play. It didn't work at first. Neither of them won the Premier League in their first season, but they knew how they wanted to play, and players got into their positions. And look at Grealish, as an example. Grealish couldn't get his head around the system to begin with, but he's got it eventually, and now he's one of their star players. I think that's what's going to happen. I think it's going to be a lot of teething problems next season. Hell of a lot of teething problems. It's not going to be what everyone thinks. Just because we've always been better at 3 at the back and all this. That's the way we're going to play. I think Poch will just play the way that he knows best.
Yeah.
And we're just going to have to kind of live with that. And it might, like you say, there might be days when Reece James is out of position, or he's not looking like he's quite kicking or whatever, and other players look better in that position and that position. But eventually it will all just mould in. People will just get their head around what's going on, and it will mould in. That's how a manager has to play. He can't play around the players. He's got to play around the manager. It's always been that way.
Yeah. I think it's trying to tread that fine line, really. I think especially modern football, it's a little bit more of both as opposed to the manager. I don't know I think I shared it with you guys, but I don't know if anybody watching us on YouTube or on TGS TV, but there was a video released by Tifo Football that explained the 4-2-3-1 system under Pochettino at Spurs, and that's why Eric Dyer was naturally he was a centre midfielder, a central defensive midfielder, and he now plays as a centre back as a result of Pochettino. The four at the back, he would be the person at the fill. In a central defensive position, alongside the two centre backs. So that could be the role potentially for Moises Caicedo to sit in, which would free up Enzo to, distribute the ball and move forward a little bit further and accommodate for Chilwell and Reece James on the flank. So it could be an option that it might be replicated in the Premier League. One thing I wanted to bring up in this scenario, and I think it's quite key, the rumours going around that Kovacic is off to Manchester City. How do we feel about us losing a player in the prime? Ideally, I think he's 28 years old, in the prime of his career to a rival in Manchester City. I think saying rival and after this season is quite difficult to say because I think we're a million miles away from City's level at the moment. But do you feel it's, to me, like, considering that something came out like 6 weeks ago when he said, "Oh, I feel it's." I can't see me playing anybody or anywhere else. Why would anyone want to play anywhere else? And then all of a sudden the rumours start circulating once again. I think it was just a week later. To me, it kind of feels, I don't want to say snaky, but snaky. Like it's kind of. How do you feel about it, like, Charlie? Losing Kovacic, is it snaky? Is it at least Kante is going to Saudi Arabia. Do you know what I mean? He's going somewhere that we're not going to meet him on a regular basis.
Yeah, it's just actually given me an idea that we could send Lukaku out to Saudi Arabia. But no, it's Kovacic. Look, he's got to do what he's got to do. Again, his contract's up next year. We need to cash in or cash out. Simple as that. We need to either sign him up or let him go somewhere.
Yeah.
Man City have obviously come in for him. Yes, it's disappointing, but ultimately, what's better, doing that or losing him on a free next year? If nobody else wants him, then we're going to have to live with that. I personally think he's going to do wonders at Man City. I really do. Yeah. For 2 or 3 years, I think he'll do really well there. I think he's got that ability to just mould into a system. He's very disciplined. If he respects the manager, if he's he's one of those players.
It'd be hard not to, isn't it?
Yeah, if his heart's in it, he's a very good player. Yeah. Unfortunately, he is a bit snaky. I know what you mean. He's a bit of a spiky character, a bit prickly in the sense that certain managers he turns up for with Chelsea and Potter, he never really seemed to have any respect for. And that was basically the start of the end for him, wasn't it? I think that was when he started listening to voices and stuff like that and asking his agent what was on the market. I think before that he was okay. But I think again he's a servant of the club. He's been he must have been Chelsea 5 years.
Yeah, I think it's
served his time.
I think he came initially on a loan deal.
Yeah, sorry season.
Yeah, he went on a loan from Real Madrid on a swap deal for someone. Maybe, might be wrong.
I think the Havertz deal. Courtois deal.
Courtois Havertz, not Havertz. Yeah, the Courtois deal. Yeah,
another snake going in one direction, and we get another snake coming in this way. Tem, how do you feel about losing Kovacic? Do you feel like he's going to be a player that's missed on the basis of this season, or do you think, with all the wholesale changes, now's the right time to have those younger midfielders and kind of ship out the players that are on higher wages? Because I think Kovacic is on. I think he's on high 100,000s a week. Is now the right time to cash in?
Yes, but no, not to Man City.
Elaborate.
I think that's the biggest issue for me. You don't sell to your rivals, as I've always said, especially when you're trying to catch up to them and you're giving them your biggest assets. Like, how do you expect to, especially if you don't have a plan to replace him, if you know what I mean? I know I can see with Kante we're probably trying to get Caicedo, but beyond that, how are we going to replace losing Kovacic and Kante?
Yeah,
if you know what I mean, like
and Mount.
Yeah, and
Mount less so because Mount isn't necessarily a central midfielder. And we've lost Jorginho as well, and it's looking like Carney's going out on loan. It's a tricky one. It's a hard pill to swallow, really, because I didn't expect Kovacic really to go. Like, it's like you said, like you don't sell to your rivals under different circumstances, really. Like you look at Jorginho, you know, he had 18 months. Was it 18 months on his contract, or was it going to expire at the end of this season?
I think
No, it was the
Uh,
end of this season, wasn't it?
Yeah, it
So
was.
it made sense to get 12 million from him when there's only
Mm.
like 4 months the rest of the season. That just made business sense, really. You know, his contract wasn't going to be extended. But Kovacic, to me, it is snaky, especially considering he did that interview and said that he didn't want to go anywhere. So if you don't want to go anywhere, why would you then suddenly just change your mind days later?
I think, but that interview was done, I think, through the club. And there've been rumors of him leaving for like the last 5-6 months. So again, I never thought his head was in it. It's especially how you saw right before the World Cup. I don't know if you guys remember. He was playing. He was playing like he was injured. Apparently, he had an injury just before the World Cup. Went to the World Cup, played completely out of his skin. I'm sure he played 90 minutes throughout that.
He did.
And then he came back and he just looked terrible, absolutely terrible. I thought at first, okay, it might be because, you know, he hasn't had a rest, it might be the World Cup, but then he's just not looked interested whatsoever. And usually he was one of the players under Thomas Tuchel. You could see like he gave it 120%. Maybe not everything came off, but he put a shift in. He usually was one of the highest players who covered the most yards, you know, made the most dribbles, tackles, success rate. You know, he tried everything to actually play, but the last maybe 6-7 months, I really haven't seen that in him, and I always thought he wanted to leave.
Yeah, I mean, Charlie, does that kind of smell a little bit like a mercenary to you? I mean, you've got a big problem with, you know, mercenaries coming in, because that it is to me. Like, he turns up when he wants to turn up. You know, Temba's giving you an example of that.
All right, but the thing is, right, Kovacic is a bad example, but when a lot of players come in, they come in for a manager, don't they? Aubameyang, for example, you could argue he was a mercenary this season, but then he came in for Tuchel. I can actually sort of, as much as I don't really like the guy, I can understand the attitude, because ultimately it's like you sold the dream, and then literally a few days later, someone's got the dream and got a balloon and just gone boop out of it, you know, and he's got a 2-year contract. I mean, he's still on contract now for a year. Can you believe that? I mean, he could end up staying at Chelsea, right, for the next year.
I don't think he will.
I don't think he wants to. I don't think we want him there, but
he still owns his house in Barcelona, and I think Barcelona, now that they can't sign Messi, I think they're going to go try and get him back again. Which I think, do you know what? Even if we get him at a loss, it's just another example of the terrible policy that Chelsea have when it comes to signing players. I think it's a continuation. Doesn't matter what regime, we always have that history of signing just terrible players.
I can imagine
Aubameyang has been one of those.
I can imagine Kovacic as someone who's gone to a World Cup final. He's won the Champions League. He's probably, I don't know, Real Madrid, he probably won a few trophies as well. You know, at Chelsea, he's won various trophies as well.
He won. I think he won like 4. I think he won like 4 Champions Leagues at Madrid.
League. Yeah, all this sort of stuff, right? And you can imagine when, you know, he's playing for Tuchel, right? And he's like, right, yeah, I'm here, blah blah blah. And then all of a sudden, Potter comes in. He's probably going, Jesus Christ, this isn't really what I signed up for. And all of a sudden, he's having second thoughts, you know, and he's going, well, hang on, I've got a year left on my contract. This is a good time to leave. Chelsea are asking me, do I want to sign for a new contract? I could probably get a bit more money elsewhere. I'm 28 years old or whatever I am. He might be 30. How old do you reckon he's 30? Kovacic, 28?
29, I think.
Like that. He's not that old. Like, he's still got a few years left in him. Chelsea will be happy to sell me. I'll get a contract out of Man City. I'll win a few things and then go from there, you know?
Yeah. I think another thing that we need to bring up as well is the news that Lewis Dunk has pulled out of the England squad for injuries. It means Levi Colwill is being brought up to the team for his potentially first England appearance this week on Friday, and then obviously the game on Monday for the qualifiers for the European Championships. You know, heavily rumoured potentially Brighton are very, very interested in him. And from what I've seen of him, he's looking like a fantastic left-sided ball-playing midfielder, centre-back. But do we have this issue at the moment now that we're now overstocked in a centre-back position? If Pochettino decides to go from a 4-2-3-1, Do we feel, Tem, that we're potentially overstocked in that area? Do we need to see a player like Chalobah go in? We've got Badiashile, we've got Fofana, we've got Thiago Silva, we've got Chalobah, we've got Levi Colwill. By all accounts, Colwill's going to be staying. We don't wish to sell him. But if he stays, he's going to want minutes. We don't want a Billy Gilmore situation, really. Like, I really like Billy Gilmore for Chelsea. I thought he was fantastic. I didn't want to see him go to Brighton, but he went to Brighton. But the reason why he went is because we were going to send him on loan. He's like, no, you may as well just get rid of me if you're not going to play me, which in a weird way I kind of respect. But do we have too many centre-backs now? Do we need to see somebody leave?
Yeah, unfortunately, I suppose you can never get the right balance. It's either you're too light or you have too many at the same time. You remember a few years ago where Liverpool had that centre back crisis where they were playing, I think, Henderson and Fabinho as centre back. So you don't know.
Nat Phillips from Bolton or something like
that. Yeah. So you don't really ever know like exactly what's going to happen. I'm sure we had a crisis. I can't remember. I think it was midfield last season. You remember when we had like 11 or 12 injuries? No, winger. We had no wingers. We had to play Gallagher, Mount, and Brozier as a front three. Yeah. So you never really know what sort of position you're going to be left with in terms of injuries. We know Fofana usually gets injured. But Badiashile, I'm sure I've seen at Monaco, he had quite a few injuries as well. So is it a case of keeping Colwill's the best for his career? Probably not, because I think he should probably be starting every week. So the best thing for him is probably to either go out on loan again or ask for a move.
But I don't think he's going to go out on loan. I don't think he will. I think he might refuse and say, well, just sell me then. I think, is it because of the FFP? And I really don't want to see him go because I really, really like Trevor Chalobah. But Charlie, do you think Trevor Chalobah is probably somebody that's going to be on the chopping block to accommodate that?
Yeah, and again, it's another bad decision. It's just what's the point of raising these players if we're just going to sell them? And most of and the problem is that we have is half the time they end up becoming very good players. We have a really good academy. People forget this. Roman put a hell of a lot of money into Cobham and into the academy, into all that. What was the point of that? Might as well have just bought just given the local Sunday League managers some money and just asked them who his best players were and bought them. Do you see what I'm trying to say though? Because why did we nurture these players in the first place? We spent money on these. You got to remember something, right? It's not a one-way thing. It's not like Mason Mount. We put money into Mason Mount for years before he plays his first game for Chelsea. He's had loads of pasta on us, lasagnas on us. No, not just that, but what I'm trying to say, he's had coaching which costs money. He's had coaching year on year on year on year. He doesn't pay for that. We pay for that, right? We believe in these players, and then we go, one day you'll play for Chelsea, and then they play for Chelsea, and then we go, oh, by the way, sorry, FFP, we're going to sell you. I mean, it just stinks. Do you not think? I mean, no wonder Mason Mount wants to go to Man United. You'll probably find out in years gone by that when he writes his book eventually, about how many goals he scored for England or whatever, that he will write a book and it will say about how badly he was treated at Chelsea because of that. And Chalobah as well, because we're just throwing players away. We did it with De Bruyne. We've done it with so many players. Salah. I mean, Salah's is a bad example, but
I know what you mean. Like Tammy Abraham, I think is a better example of that because it's a player that was developed through the academy. Salah and De Bruyne were bought at a younger age. Like I think De Bruyne we bought from Genk when he was like 18 or something like that, and then we developed him that way and sent him out to Wolfsburg. But yeah, I get exactly what you mean. I think the trouble that I have. I would very much like to see us, stick with these players and develop and show that there is a route into the squad. Like, I think it makes sense long term, but you're sacrificing that long term kind of beneficial for short term success, really. And I think, do you not feel that, Tem, that some Chelsea fans are maybe spoiled by the fact in the last 25 years, or let's go the last 20 years since Roman bought the club, and we'll disregard the last season under Bowley, but we have been spoiled. We've won trophy after trophy after trophy, Champions Leagues twice, the Premier League, FA Cups. We'll ignore the 3 in a row finals that we lost in the last few seasons. But do you think that that's potentially an issue as well, that they've got to kind of manage the short-term expectations for kind of the more, how do I put this, fleeting fans, should I say?
No, well, I think when people mention about Salah and De Bruyne and Mata and whoever was sold and say, you know what, it was for the better of the team, it was, because at the end of the day, you can't argue with the trophies won. But I think with this new era, things like those type of mistakes you can't really make, because it doesn't look like this club is going to spend a lot more money. So you've got to spend more time on nurturing the players you actually do have and the players, you've invested in the long-term time. So you've got to be really careful of not letting go of your own players to just sign replacements for more money, because you're just essentially wasting money.
Yeah.
Because, when you buy a player like we're doing now on low wages, you can make back that transfer fee. What you can't make back is those wages. Those wages are just basically, disposable. They just go straight to the player. You don't see those wages come back again. So in the sense of when we have these academy players, all they are costing us is wages, or, they don't cost us a transfer fee over 5 years. We're not paying external club, 12 million a season.
It's like what Charlie says, like, we're not spending £60 million on the development of Mason Mount. We're spending £60 million on the development of a whole crop of players, really. It's been spread across there.
Can I just interrupt you then? Because this whole thing about, we bought this player for, because I've seen this so many times in the paper, right? But, we'll buy Pulisic for 50 million and we're going to sell him for 20 million or whatever. So we lost 30 million, blah, blah, and then blah, blah. Look, it's not about who we, overall, you win some, you lose some. It's like anything in life, And it annoys me that people think that somehow because we didn't pay any money for Mount, therefore we've got to offset it against some other transfer that we paid too much. If the transfer policy was good, we wouldn't have this problem. So that's why it comes from the top. It's nothing to do with Mount being a bad player or being disposable or that Man United are interested or something like that. It's all to do with the fact that we've wasted money on players, that we are in this position in the first place. Because look, let me tell you something, right? Mount would never have been sold this summer if Roman was still in charge. That's a fact. We wouldn't have bought all these other players either, and probably Thomas Tuchel may well still be manager. I mean, obviously, if he didn't win the quadruple, maybe he wouldn't be, right? We all know what Roman was like for managers, but ultimately, Mount would probably still be there. I believe that,
Yeah. No, I have to agree. I mean, I think one thing I want to go through is I think it might be worth looking at kind of like homegrown players that have been developed for the academy and think, let's think of it logically as opposed to let's try and let our head rule our hearts a little bit, because I think our hearts, all three of us would say, okay, keep them. We have to kind of think logically, like in terms of our heads. So we're looking through the squad, and I'll go through a few numbers here. So, Ruben Loftus-Cheek, it's on the back. Head, heart. Let's go with the head. Is it something that you keep just for his versatility, or with you going with your head, do you think, okay, we should probably cash it in just to kind of balance the books a little bit?
Heart, I'd probably sell him, but I'd probably keep him in my head, to be honest.
Your heart is telling you to sell him?
Yeah, I never really connected. I don't know why. I just never connected with the guy. I just never really saw him as a. But in terms of what,
why is your head saying keep him?
Because he offers so many in times of crisis. You can always call on
Loftus-Cheek.
Yeah, exactly. But I never look at him like don't really have that much connection to him as a player. I don't know. I can't explain it. I suppose because he's on loan most of the time.
Yeah, I mean, Tam, do you agree? Does your heart tell you, sell, and your head says keep?
No, I'd say my
other way around.
No, both. I think he's the first real academy player. I'd say, like, I put all my bets on. He would make it right to the very top, and unfortunately, his injuries have got in the way of his development, and also the some of the bad decisions of managers maybe not knowing where exactly to get the best out of him. But again, I scream to the versatility and the fact that we're getting rid of so many players. You need someone at least with somewhat experience in that midfield, because it looks way too young for me for what it's set out to be next season. Yeah.
Especially, if we're losing, you both make a valid point. Like, especially with that player that can fill in at a central defensive side, and his versatility to fill in at right back if need be, or we've seen him play as a number 10 previously. I think we've even seen him play at left back at sometimes. you know, if we're losing that many players, that I potentially, if we weren't losing Kante and Kovacic, I would have been like, okay, well, maybe it's time that we cash in on him. But, you know, if we did keep him, I wouldn't be upset by it. Do you know what I mean? He's got that versatility to him. But yeah, Ruben Loftus-Cheek, Trevor Chalobah, you know, we discussed previously 5 centre-backs that we have. He's probably the 5th centre-back. Is there somebody, you know, what's your head telling you?
Head. Sorry, go on. I'd say, sorry, go
I would say, with the amount of centre backs we have, probably sell.
Yeah.
And if we need to make that money, that's reportedly true. I would sell him for the benefit of his own future as well. I think he played really well for us when being called upon, bar several obvious mistakes, you know. But yeah, I'd say sell him.
I'll give him 1 more year. I'll give him 1 more year. Let's see what happens. I mean, Silva's only got a year left. He's going to go. So we know he's going to go. Someone's got to fill his place. Let's see what Fofana can do next season. Can he fill his place? Do we need to buy someone next summer who can? Do we need to buy a bona fide world-class central defender who can walk into that team? You know, if Fofana can lead that line, and let's see what happens with Koulibaly as well. I think
I forgot about Koulibaly.
You know,
I completely forgot. We've got 6 centre backs.
We've got a few, so I would keep him for 1 more year. Like, we've just signed him on a contract, I think, recently. So I would keep.
It's probably a loan.
Rush. I don't think there's any rush to get him out the door. I'll just keep him.
What about on a loan basis? You know, with Silva only got the 1 year left, and we kind of need to free up space for players. What about Koulibaly? Chalobah going on loan?
I think he's 22, 23 now. He's already been on
23.
Loan.
He was at Lorient a few seasons ago. Yeah.
So I think he wants stability in his future now. So it's either keep or sell, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Let's look down. So it's a bit difficult one, but Armando Broya, it's difficult to discuss basically on his ACL. Really, still recovering from that. So I think for the benefit of that reason, I think it's very difficult to say. If it's me, I keep him because I thought he's great when he was at loan at Southampton. He's got potential to learn from potentially an incumbent striker coming in. I'd keep him regardless of what happened, really. Looking through the list, though, Conor Gallagher is a big one here. So again, another centre. He has been through the academy. He's not really producing the performances that we've seen him for Crystal Palace. But he's a player that can fill in that role in centre midfield, and also as a number 10 if need be. Conor Gallagher, Charlie, is he somebody that you would, if you your head telling you?
Give him 1 more go, 1 more year. I mean, he's had 1 year. He tries hard, doesn't he? And he runs around a lot. I mean, the thing is with him, I would say he needs coaching. He's clearly got the effort. He gets into the England team, England squad. So, you know, clearly, and the fact that Liverpool want him and other teams want him, there's clearly something in that. So I just think let's just keep him for 1 more year. Let's see what happens. And he did well at Palace, you know. And my heart is all with him because I like him. You know, I think he tries hard. He's got a good work ethic, you know.
Yeah. Charlie of the Tem, I think, you know, we've got to sell academy players. You know, in the grand scheme, is Gallagher going to be the person that you keep?
To answer both questions, on Chalobah, I do think he's a very good player already. I just think he needs to cut out the bozo moments. He just needs to keep his consistency high, and that's what will make him a very good player. In terms of Gallagher, I think you should sell him. He just does not look like a technical footballer whatsoever. I think he struggles to play for any top 6 team or maybe even top 10 team, to be honest. I just don't think, when you look at him with the ball at his feet, he just can't get it out quick enough, and it probably explains why he doesn't even play for England much, to be honest. He's usually unused sub.
Yeah, I mean, like from Dale says, plus surely a player like Chalobah would be someone Poch could morph into a very good player. Like what Charlie mentioned, I'll take Chalobah out of that, but put Gallagher in that context. Charlie mentioned, you know, he tries, he runs around, and, you know, Poch does like players with that high press. Could Pochettino be that person to give him a year? You know, it could suit his game. You never know. It might be something that we can experience the best from. I'm just looking at other players down the list here now. So Carney is not one of those players. Noni Madueke, and then we're just looking at players out on loan really. So Ian Matson, a left back. Let's talk about left backs. An interesting one. You know, he was a part of the Burnley squad that got promoted. Burnley interested him. Chelsea, I think we rejected a £20 million bid from Burnley. I think we're holding out for 30 for him. But, you know, Ian Mason, would you like to see the opportunity to give him in a Chelsea shirt, especially when we've got Mark Cucurella as the reserve left back presently at the moment? It could free opportunity for Lewis Hall to give a chance in midfield as well, Charlie.
Yeah, I don't know enough about the guy, if I'm being totally honest. But yeah, I mean, anything's better than Cucurella, and that's my tuppence, if you like.
Tem, what do you reckon? Ian Mason, is that a player that you'd think would like to see given an opportunity, especially considering we haven't actually seen him in a Chelsea shirt? Would that be something that we'd like to see?
I would be hesitant to say this, but I think it's probably best to sell him. I think we need to make some money somewhere. He hasn't played for Chelsea. If Burnley are willing to pay 20 to 30 million for him, why not?
Yeah.
If we really think that highly of him, then you would set a buyback clause or something.
Yeah.
First refusal or something. But I think, yeah. So
I think with a lot of these academy players, I would very much like to see a buyback clause inserted. I'd even take less. Like, it sounds silly, but in the context of FFP, but I'd take less money for them if we could have a lower buyback clause, so we're not just losing far too much money. Because I'd hate to see like Tammy. I think, didn't we sell him for like 35, and then the buyback clause is 68 million or something stupid like that? I'd rather just have sold him for less and then got more. But then there's other players as well. So Faustino Anjurin is another player. We've seen him a few times for Chelsea. He's perennially out on loan, mostly at championship clubs. You know, he was at Lokomotiv Moscow, and then he was at Huddersfield Town for a season. You know, 3 goals and 15 appearances. Has either of you seen anything from Manchurian to suggest?
Yeah, so he's played well when he's actually got the chance, but I think he's had a big injury this year. I'm pretty sure he did have an injury this year, so I didn't actually watch him after I heard about the injury. I'm not sure if he came back, but from what I remember, he did have quite a big injury.
Yeah, not from what I can see, but then I'd have to do a bit more research into it. But again, he's another number 10 style player and attacking midfielder. So it's interesting to see how things are going to develop. It'd be nice at this point next season to have a discussion about a player that we know for definite coming in. I think Dale has mentioned here on the comments here, it's looking like Inter is asking about Koulibaly, Onana, Lukaku, and Chalobah being discussed too, according to Lord Fabrizio, as Charlie would call them. So we should see. It'd be interesting what's going to happen as things develop in the next week. But I don't know if there's any other business anybody wants to discuss.
I think that's all good for today.
Yeah,
tremendous. Well,
everything.
Tem, Charlie, I appreciate you both joining me this week. I appreciate you all for watching us here on TKS TV as well as on YouTube. Make sure you hit that like button and hit that subscribe button, because we really appreciate it, because we've seen week on week the number of views going up and the number of subscribers going up. So we greatly appreciate you joining this week. This has been the We Talk Chelsea podcast, and we will see you all next week. Take care.